Savitri has been living through a dreadful darkness. It's not just a physical darkness, it's a psychological darkness. So deep is this darkness that she lost touch with Shraddhavan completely. She had an inner contact with him, but even this was cut. She even lost the sense of herself and of her love. And this was a very, very painful state which seemed to last a long time. Because when we are in pain, particularly when we are in psychological pain, time seems to pass very, very slowly. But still, in spite of all this, Sri Aurobindo says, she lived in spite of death. She conquered still. In vain her puissant being was oppressed. Her heavy, long monotony of pain, tardily of its fierce self-torture, tired. Something in the being grows tired. It's a very profound truth that we can't be in any psychological state unless there's some inner support for it. So when that support is gone, then at first a faint, inextinguishable gleam, pale but immortal, flickered in the gloom, as if a memory came to spirits dead, a memory that wished to live again, dissolved from mind in nature's natal sleep. It's like a soul that has been dead waking up again. So I'm going to read on from there. This gleam, no? It wandered like a lost ray of the moon, revealing to the night her soul of dread. Serpentine in the gleam, the darkness lolled, its black hoods jeweled with the mystic glow. Its dull, sleek folds shrank back and coiled and slid, as though they felt all light a cruel pain, and suffered from the pale approach of hope. Night felt assailed her heavy, somber reign. The splendor of some bright eternity threatened with this faint beam of wandering truth, her empire of the everlasting naught. Implacable in her intolerant strength, and confident that she alone was true, she strove to stifle the frail, dangerous ray. Aware of an all-negating immensity, she reared her giant head of nothingness, her mouth of darkness swallowing all that is. She saw in herself the tenebrous absolute. But still the light prevailed, and still it grew, and Savitri to her lost self awoke. Her limbs refused the cold embrace of death. Her heartbeats triumphed in the grasp of pain. Her soul persisted, claiming for its joy the soul of the beloved, now seen no more. Before her, in the stillness of the world, once more she heard the treading of a god. And out of the dumb darkness, Shraddhavan, her husband, grew into a luminous shade. Then a sound pealed through that dead, monstrous realm, vast like the surge in a tired swimmer's ears, clamoring, a fatal, iron-hearted roar. Death, mission to the night, his lethal call. This is my silent, dark immensity. This is the home of everlasting night. This is the secrecy of nothingness, entombing the vanity of life's desires. Hast thou beheld thy source, O transient heart, and known from what the dream thou art was made? In this stark sincerity of nude emptiness, hopest thou still always to last and love? We'll start on this side. Bhavan, you begin. From line 107, yeah.
It wandered like a lost ray of the moon, revealing to the night her soul of dread. Serpentine and it gleamed the darkness below. Its black hoods jeweled with the mystic glow. Its dull sleek folds shrank back and coiled and slid, as though they felt all light a cruel pain and suffered from the pale approach of hope.
Thank you. It's just a tiny gleam, a faint gleam, just a very faint light. It moves around like a lost ray of the moon. That means not a very bright light, and we can't see the source that it's coming from. But that pale little light, it's a very interesting thing that if we're in total darkness, even the tiniest little bit of light forces us to see. Of course, we can close our eyes, but if there's just a little bit of light, we can see. No? So that little bit of light is revealing to the night, to the darkness, what she is, her soul of dread, of terror, of fear. And he describes the darkness, the night, like a great serpent. Actually, a serpent with many hoods. Serpentine in the gleam, the darkness lulled. It is lulling as when you're stretched out loosely. So that darkness is spread out, but it has these black hoods, many hoods extended like a cobra, many-headed cobra. And of course those many hooded serpents, those nagas, often they have jewels, on their crests. In this case, they're completely black, but that little bit of light reflects, makes like a jewel-like glow, even on those dark hoods of the night. But the serpent itself draws back. There it is, many folds. It's huge, dull, sleek, shiny folds. Shrank back. It doesn't like that light. It coils around and moves away, slides away, as though they felt all light, a cruel pain. And that light is representing hope. So that darkness, it's as if that great serpent of darkness is suffering from this pale approach of hope. Sarojini, you'd read, yes?
Night filled
Assailed
her heavy summer rain. The splendor of some bright eternity had
threatened
with this faint beam of wandering through her empire of the everlasting night.
Naught. This is naught. N-O-U-G-H-T. Naught. Nothing. A zero. So night felt assailed. She feels attacked. She feels her heavy, somber, dark rain is being attacked by this tiny little light. Because that little light seems to represent all the splendor of some bright eternity, which is threatening with this tiny little light, this faint beam of wandering truth. Light is an expression of truth. It makes us see things as they are. So all this bright eternity seems to be threatening night's empire, her rule of everlasting nothingness.
Here the her is light.
It's night, and in the next lines also when it says her and she, this is night. Gumsun.
In trouble of the strength, and contrast that she alone was true. She strove to stifle. She strove to stifle the frail, dangerous way, aware of all negating immensity. She wailed her giant herd of nothingness, a mouth of darkness, swallowing all that is. She saw in herself the tenebrous absolute.
Yes. So this is night. She has this strength, this intolerant strength that will not allow anything but darkness to exist. And she's implacable in that strength, unrelenting, pitiless. She won't give way at all, because she's confident that she, the night, the darkness, that is the only thing that is true, that is real. And so she tries to stifle, to smother that faint, dangerous ray of light. She wants to swallow it up. She's aware, she's conscious. This is not just an ordinary physical darkness. This is a being, a force of darkness. She's aware of this all-negating immensity, her power which says no to everything. It's a vast power that denies light and hope and life and love. So like a great serpent, a great cobra, she rears up her head, ready to strike. Her giant head of nothingness. And she opens her mouth to swallow everything that is. And this great power of night feels in herself that she is or represents the absolute of darkness, tenebrous, of shadows. She shows her power and her strength. Mila.
But still the light prevailed, and still it grew, and Savitri to her lost self awoke. Her limbs refused the cold embrace of death. Her heart beat strong in the grasp of pain. Her soul resisted claiming for its joy. The soul of the beloved now seemed no more.
So it's as if Savitri herself has passed through death, and now she's coming alive again and recovering her sense of herself. So this light, not only it resists the darkness, it grows stronger and brighter. And Savitri wakes up to that sense of herself which she had lost. And the parts of her, it's not anymore her physical body, this is her subtle body. Her limbs refused the cold embrace of death. Her heart beats, triumphed even in this grasp of pain. And her soul is still there, still persisting, continuing in its claim. It claims for its joy that she has a right to enjoy the soul of her beloved Shraddhavan, even though she still can't see him at this moment. Now seen no more. As we were reading these lines, I remembered that Mother has spoken about how to become free of the fear of death. And she mentions several different methods. But one of the methods, she said, is to pass through death, to go through the death experience and come out of it. And then you know your immortality. So it's as if something like that has happened to her. It's as if she has died and now she's awakening to life again. Ganga Lakshmi, you like to read?
Yes. Before her in the stillness of the world, once more she heard the treading of the god, of the god. And out of the darkness, Satyavan, her husband, grew into a luminous shade.
Yes. So a shade in the sense of a subtle body. Yes. So as this waking up happens, first she hears in the stillness of this dark world, she can hear the God moving, taking his steps, and she can see Satyavan. Perhaps they've been moving on all the time that she was going through this experience. No? Now she can see him again as a luminous shadow.
Shraddhavan,
Yes.
I have a question. When you tell before, when you clean the fear of death, when you go through the death and you pass your experience, when you come back through this experience, you suffer?
There seems to be some suffering still. There's some pain. Her heart beats triumphed, even in the grasp of pain, it says. So still the strength of the heartbeats comes back in spite of some pain. That's what it seems to say. But what she has achieved just now, it is a kind of victory. Yes? She has not been destroyed by that darkness. She has not died. No? So now death has to react to that victory of hers. And
we can say this, she is going through death. No?
Yes.
She overcome the fear of death.
Not only the fear of death, but the experience of death. Yeah.
But she reacts.
So that means even in death you still have some light to tell you.
I suppose it depends how developed the inner being is. Yeah. How independent it is from the physical body, from the subtle body, from the mind, from all the instrumentation. When the soul, when the inner self has become really strong enough to exist in its own independent right, then perhaps one can have this experience. So what does death say? Who's going to read? Andres.
Then a sound pealed through that dead monstrous rim, vast like the surge in a tired swimmer's ears, clamoring a fatal, iron-hearted roar, death mission to the night his lethal call.
Yes. So in this world that Savitri is in now, this dead, monstrous realm, it's vast, it's dark, it's threatening. But this sound, loud sound, pealing like the sound of loud bells. And Sri Aurobindo says that sound was not only loud, it was vast, it was like the sound of the sea or the ocean, the surge, the powerful ocean in a tired swimmer's ears. Somebody who's been shipwrecked perhaps and has been trying courageously to reach the land, but he feels that his strength is failing, and then that sound of the sea, the surge, the waves in the ears can be very threatening. And this voice of death is clamoring again, like a very large noise, a roar, like the roar of a lion. This is a roar which signifies death, something fatal, and it seems to proceed from a heart of iron. There's nothing soft and gentle about this heart. It's full of adamant strength. Death, missioned to the night. He sends out into the night, just like a lion roaring, his lethal call. Lethal also means deathly, deadly. So just in the sound of that voice of death, there's something threatening, terrifying. Joel, you would read?
This is my silent, dark immensity. This is the home of everlasting night. This is the secrecy of nothingness, entombing the vanity of life's desires.
Thank you. So he says, look, this world where you are now, this is my realm, my silent, dark immensity, vast realm. This is the home of everlasting night. Here no day comes. And what is more, this place is the secrecy, the secret home of nothingness. So here, all the desires of life, all the movement of life cannot exist anymore. Its vanity, its helplessness and uselessness gets exposed. And it's as if all those movements of life die and get put in a tomb out of which they can never emerge. That's where you are now, he says.
But he says secrecy. So
This is a secret place. Yeah.
It's only secret place, or the nothingness, it has got some secret.
Yes, the nothingness also has a secret. Or the nothingness is a secret, I think. Mathilde.
Hast thou beheld thy source, O transient heart, and known from what the dream thou art was made? In this stark sincerity of nude emptiness, hopest thou still always to laugh and roll?
Yes. He says, have you seen where you come from? This is your source. This is your origin. You've come from this realm of nothingness. And here you are, you're insisting on your love, on your heart. But that is only transient. That is only passing. It doesn't last long. It's come from here. And it will have to dissolve back into this nothingness. Look around you. See, realize what you are just a dream. And see what your dream, the dream that you are, is made out of. This nothingness, this darkness. You don't really exist. So here in this stark emptiness, this stark sincerity of nude emptiness, here everything is empty and it's shown to be empty. There's no illusion covering it up. So see how things really are. This stark sincerity. Here there's no pretense. There's no covering anything up. So here you are. Can you still continue to hope, to last, and to love? That you will go on existing? That your love will go on existing? How can you hope that? Wanda, will you read?
The woman answered not. Her spirit refused. The voice of night, then you and death, then thought.
Yes, I think we'll stop there. So she doesn't say anything. She doesn't reply to him. But in herself, she's refusing. Her spirit is not accepting what he says. She refuses this voice of night, of nothingness, that seems to be conscious, that seems to have knowledge. Her spirit refuses and rejects this death that can think and which is expressing itself to her.
Can you explain this sentence, how it is to be get the meaning? The voice of night that knew and death that thought.
Her spirit refused. It doesn't accept this voice of night. And this night seems to have some consciousness, some knowledge. It's not just a darkness, a physical darkness. It's a conscious darkness. Her spirit is refusing that. And it's also refusing to accept this death, which is also not a nothingness. It seems to have a power of thought. So there's something in her which can't accept that, which doesn't accept that. And in the next lines, we read why she can't accept it. Praveen, yes.
In her beginningless infinity, through her soul's reaches, unconfined she gazed. She saw the undying fountains of her life. She knew herself eternal without birth.
Yes. She can know herself like this because of this great yoga that she's passed through, that we read about in Book 7, and particularly in Canto 6 and 7 of Book 7 of the Book of Yoga. Those experiences that she had, they give her this certainty, this knowledge that she has beginningless infinity. There's something in all of us which has this beginningless infinity. But as long as we are identified with our surface being or the outer sheaths of our being, we are not aware of that beginningless infinity. But if, like Savitri, we can go through that great yoga, then we can know who we really are, and that we have no beginning and no end. So, and she can gaze, she can look through all those vast expanses of her being, her soul's reaches. How far does her soul extend? Unconfined. There's no limit to what she can see. And she sees where her life has come from, the undying fountains of her life. She knows that she is eternal, without birth. She can be born many times. She can die also many times. But she has an eternal, timeless being, and she's identified with that. Bom.
Still approaching her with endless night. Yes, the silent dark. inflicted on her eyes. The mortal can of this tremendous case. Also, thou hast survived the unborn boy, which never shall forgive. Why can anything endure? The fear of violence and passion thoughts, forcing the immobile past to suffer and die.
Live.
His sorrowful victory always has the goal won, to live for a little without Satyava.
Yes. So she shows death that she knows herself eternal without birth. But he's still opposing her with his endless night. He hasn't given up yet. Death, the dire god, inflicted on her eyes, he shows to her the immortal calm of his tremendous gaze. His immortality, his power, his look. And this is what he says to her. You have survived. You've survived this unborn emptiness. This also hasn't been born. It's always been there. And this emptiness, which is my realm of death, will never forgive as long as there is time, as long as there is space, as long as there is a creation. This realm will never forgive the primal violence that fashioned thought, that original act of violence, of violation. It came along and spoiled my vast emptiness. It created thought, shaped thought, and it forced this unmoving vastness to wake up and live and suffer. And you have survived that emptiness. So you have won a victory. But you've only won this sorrowful victory that you can go on living. You haven't died. You need not die now. You can go on living for a little while without Satyavan. That's what you've won. Uday.
What shall an action goddess give to thee, who held a heart beats only Shukala, the nothing dreams existence and delay, with the labor of living internal sleep.
Yes. So he says, okay, so the goddess is supporting you, the ancient goddess. It's clear you've got some kind of divine support. She's helping your heartbeats and keeping you alive. But what is she doing? She's only prolonging, extending, stretching out this dream of existence. You think you're alive. You think that you exist. But in fact, it's nothing. You don't really exist. And she's delaying with the labor of living. You have to go on now with all this hard work of living instead of entering into the rest of eternal sleep. Sometimes we think that that's what death will be like. Yesterday I was watching a film about a scholar, a British lady, who has been studying the ancient Romans, and the way that she studies them is by seeing what is written, what they write on their tombstones. And one of them has stuck into my mind It's the tombstone of a little girl. I've forgotten what her name was, but her name was there. She died quite young. Perhaps she was 9 or 11 or something. And so the parents have set up the tomb and they say, "We are sad, but traveller, don't be too sad. Think what a beautiful rest her little body is having." So they comforted themselves by thinking like that. Perhaps that little girl had to work very hard in her lifetime. That's what that scholar found, that so many children, young children, had to work very hard. So then it's comforting to think that, okay, we leave the body and it's a wonderful rest. It may also be, of course. Leila, will you read?
The fragile miracle of thinking clay, armed with illusions, walks the child of time. To fill the void around he feels and reflects, the void he came from and to which he goes. He magnifies himself and names it God. He calls the heavens to help his suffering woes. He sees above him with a longing heart. There are spaces more unconscious than himself that have not even his privilege of mind, and empty of all but their unreal blue, and peoples them with bright and merciful powers.
Yes. So, a fragile miracle of thinking clay. That's what we are, of course, in a way, in our physical being. Easily breakable, astonishing miracle of thinking clay. The stuff of our body is very similar to the stuff of the earth. So we are children of time, and death says we are armed with illusions. If we knew how things really were, we wouldn't have the courage to go on. But these illusions, this is his view, not our view. So we feel this emptiness all around us. No? We feel it and we dread it, we fear it. Death says you have come from this emptiness and you will go back to it. So what do? You make yourself, or you make an imagination of yourself on a very large scale, and you give it the name God. And then you put God up there in the sky and you pray to that figure, the heavens, to help your suffering and your hopes. We look up, we see the skies, these bare spaces that are more unconscious than we are, have not even his privilege of mind. Having a mind and being conscious is a privilege which the empty skies don't have. They are empty of everything except their unreal blue. And it is a fact that that blue that we see in the skies, that beautiful color, it is in fact a kind of illusion. It's simply the way the light passes through the atmosphere. But we look up there and we think, oh, there are great powers, bright and merciful powers, who will give us light and give us help. And we call to those higher powers to help us. So I think we'll stop there for today. He goes on for quite a long time telling her his view of what humanity is. It wandered like a lost ray of the moon, revealing to the night her soul of dread. Serpentine in the gleam, the darkness lolled, its black hoods jeweled with the mystic glow. Its dull, sleek folds shrank back and coiled and slid, as though they felt all light a cruel pain, and suffered from the pale approach of hope. Night felt assailed her heavy, sombre reign. The splendor of some bright eternity threatened with this faint beam of wandering truth, her empire of the everlasting naught. Implacable in her intolerant strength, and confident that she alone was true, she strove to stifle the frail, dangerous ray. Aware of an all-negating immensity, she reared her giant head of nothingness, her mouth of darkness swallowing all that is. She saw in herself the tenebrous absolute. But still the light prevailed, and still it grew, and Savitri to her lost self awoke. Her limbs refused the cold embrace of death. Her heartbeats triumphed in the grasp of pain. Her soul persisted, claiming for its joy the soul of the beloved, now seen no more. Before her, in the stillness of the world, once more she heard the treading of a god, and out of the dumb darkness Shraddhavan, her husband, grew into a luminous shade. Then a sound pealed through that dead, monstrous realm. Vast like the surge in a tired swimmer's ears, clamouring a fatal, iron-hearted roar, Death missioned to the night his lethal call. This is my silent, dark immensity. This is the home of everlasting night. This is the secrecy of nothingness, entombing the vanity of life's desires. Hast thou beheld thy source, O transient heart, and known from what the dream thou art was made? In this stark sincerity of nude emptiness, hopest thou still always to last and love? The woman answered not. Her spirit refused the voice of night that knew and death that thought. In her beginningless infinity, through her soul's reaches unconfined, she gazed. She saw the undying fountains of her life. She knew herself eternal without birth. But still opposing her with endless night, death, the dire god, inflicted on her eyes the immortal calm of his tremendous gaze. Although thou hast survived the unborn void, which never shall forgive while time endures, the primal violence that fashioned thought, forcing the immobile vast to suffer and live. This sorrowful victory only hast thou won, to live for a little without Shraddhavan. What shall the ancient goddess give to thee, who helps thy heartbeats? Only she prolongs the nothing dreamed existence, and delays with the labor of living thy eternal sleep. A fragile miracle of thinking clay, armed with illusions, walks the child of time. To fill the void around he feels and dreads, the void he came from and to which he goes. He magnifies his self and names it God. He calls the heavens to help his suffering hopes. He sees above him with a longing heart bare spaces more unconscious than himself, that have not even his privilege of mind, and empty of all but their unreal blue, and peoples them with bright and merciful powers.